There we go. Evening, everybody. I'll call this evening's meeting of council to order. Please note that the council chambers have reopened to the public. Meetings will continue to be live streamed and available for public viewing on YouTube. As part of the virtual public participation, if you have any questions regarding items on the agenda, please submit them by email to mail@ektwp.ca. Questions received prior to the meeting will be addressed during the public question period, which is limited to 15 minutes. We begin this regular council meeting by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin First People. We do so respecting both the land and the Indigenous people who continue to walk with us through this world. Before we get into the adoption of the agenda, I'll just recognize that I'm joined by Councillors Downey, Osterhoff, Renault, Smith, and Brayton. Councillor Edie did send her regrets to me a little bit later in the afternoon. And we have our deputy clerk, our CAO, and our technical compliance advisor from Public Works with us as well. So with that, I'm looking for a mover and seconder for the adoption of the agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Brayton, seconded by Councillor Renault, that the regular meeting of council agenda dated May 12th, 2025 be adopted. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. Does any member have a pecuniary interest with regards to any item on tonight's agenda? If so, what is the general nature? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on then to the adoption of the minutes. There are two sets of minutes there. Motion is that the special meeting of council minutes dated April 29th, 2025, and the regular meeting of council minutes dated April 29th, 2025 be adopted. Could I mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Osterhoff, seconded by Councillor Smith. Any questions, corrections, or concerns with regards to either of those sets of minutes? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Carries. Thank you. That will move into the adoption of the committee of the whole minutes. Could I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor Downey, seconded by Councillor Renault, that the committee of the whole minutes dated May 5th, 2025 be adopted. We do have a number of motions coming out of that set of minutes, but any corrections or concerns with regards to the minutes themselves? Okay, all those in favor? Carries. Thank you. All right, so from the minutes, the motion that council directs staff to inspect the 10 previously inspected cemeteries each fall and spring and provide council with an update and plan to address required maintenance. And the council directs staff to continue with other cemeteries as issues arise or requests and or complaints are brought to the attention of staff. And that the committee requests council directs in-house work to be only completed when the work is approved, staff are available, and it is deemed to be more economical than contracting the work out. And the council requests the Heritage Committee provide advice on work required at Fulford Cemetery for council's consideration and direction. And finally, the council requests the Heritage Committee investigate potential funding available for work at Fulford Cemetery as a designated property as presented in report A-25-11 during the May 5th, 2025 committee of the whole meeting. So a mover and seconder for that one, please. Moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Renault. Any discussion then around this item? Councillor Down.
So does that basically say that anything that was discussed the other night, we are going to get some pricing on? But otherwise, other than the inspections, nothing definitely moves ahead until it's approved. Is that kind of how the gist of that?
Yeah, as I'm reading the motion here, I think the two operative clauses that would best answer that are the last two. That council would be requesting the committee to provide advice on the work required, and that council would request the committee investigate potential funding. I do know there was I believe there was a motion, if we look back in the minutes, that we tweaked in terms of directing staff to get pricing for the work that had been suggested. But I don't think any authorization was actually provided to go ahead with that work. So I see that as being an information input rather than pre-authorizing any work. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Nolan?
And through your worship, I believe that's the direction the staff took from that, was that we were waiting for council to meet to give us that direction officially, as opposed to from the committee.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Councillor Devon?
It does, sort of. Like what I understood is that we were going to try and with the inspections to come up with some plans that could possibly be inserted into the budget of the following year. And that's what the idea of the inspections were. But as far as the recommendations, the recommendation from the Heritage Committee was to do some small fix-ups this year with the small budget that we had, to just, get the path up to par somewhat. And that's when it kind of, in my opinion, spiraled out of control, because we started talking about cultural heritage value of the wall, which has already been half built, rebuilt, I mean. So I think that the offer to do that work with some volunteers has basically been put on hold. I'm not really understanding that part of it.
Yeah, and I think, and our CEO can correct me if I'm off base on this. I think sort of the journey starts with understanding from some professionals what work will be recommended, and we need to know what the cost of engaging those professionals is. Because I think one of the things that was discussed at the committee was, we don't want to spend 30,000, and I'm picking arbitrary numbers. We don't want to spend $30,000 on the pros to tell us we have $25,000 worth of work to do, right? And then the money is all gone. So we're getting estimates, and that we may be in a better position, having soaked on a little bit, to see are we in an agreement to go in that direction, a little bit less official, if I can put it that way, or are we going to proceed in a very pragmatic and official manner? I think that's where we're at right now. So does our CAO have anything to add? And I'll go to the next speaker.
Through your worship, I think staff want to come back relatively quickly with those cost estimates so that you can make a decision, and if there is capacity, if we think that there's a capacity for the Heritage Committee to do some work, then it's up to council to decide that. So, but we really want to get that expert opinion first, and then we can move forward.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
Okay, so I didn't know first. I don't recall hearing the conversation of we're pricing this out and doing the pricing to budget for next year. So maybe I was not unclear on that one. I know the key words is state one, which was the entrance and pathway to the cemetery, about the pathway and the tree being the safety component, right?
The pathway.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And then that's okay. That's sorry. That's okay. So, and I supported the idea that if that's the key safety concern right now with the pathway and the trees or whatever, and focus on that. I didn't know that we're pricing everything for budget items for the following year, which I didn't. Maybe I wasn't clear. So I don't disagree. We do have to get pricing, and yes, I do agree that engage as many of our volunteers as possible, and we've already talked about that. A lot of our other projects that we do here, which I don't disagree. So I guess it's as soon as possible, I guess, with the pricing, because technically, as you know, we can't just let someone in there with a chainsaw. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a liability thing, and they, even our staff have to go through a chainsaw training course to operate a chainsaw, or we hire it out. And I guess that's the comment that was made, that do we do it in-house or do we contract it out? Did I hear that correctly too?
That is one of the operative clauses earlier up in this motion.
Yeah. Okay.
Just as a general approach.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And I do recall that there was discussion about leveraging the Heritage Committee to do assessments, because we routinely find ourselves in this position where we get into having passed the budget, and then there's work on a cemetery, no money to do it. So we're trying to get ahead and flip the script on that.
Yeah.
So I think it is a good idea to leverage the talent that we have in the Heritage Committee to go out on those other 10 that they've identified. That would be good. This is for the more immediate. The getting of the pricing is focused specifically on the Fulford Cemetery because of the sense of urgency there. Correct.
Okay, so what exactly are we getting the pricing on then?
So through staff, so that I don't misspeak, I have a sense of it, but I think if you're already going out and doing the work, you're in the best position to provide the answer.
I may defer to Royal, but so this, I guess we're getting, this was two separate reports in here. So the one that we dealt with around the amount of the work that needed to be done was actually came later in the agenda, which was the Public Works report on the Fulford Cemetery site visit, which was recommending that there was several pieces of work that would need to be done, but getting a completed work plan for that would be best, and to have us go out and get some quotes for putting that work plan together, and then bringing that back to council to say, here's what the recommendation is, here's what it's going to cost you to get this work plan put together. Will it be completed in, like, will it be next year's budgets? Some items may fall into next year's budget, but I think we could probably look to get the engineers to give us our, what can we do this year so that we can make sure that we are doing some. I appreciate that Councillor Downey and the Heritage Committee want to see some action here. And I think it would be best if we were, making sure that the engineers were identifying what some of the quick wins that we can get, what some of the things that we can do now.
Yeah, and I will note for everyone's benefit, there is another motion coming, 3 or 4 motions from now out of that set of minutes that deals specifically with the Fulford Cemetery report and providing direction to go seek those quotations for that planning work. So that's not baked into this motion, that comes separately. Councillor Brayton?
Thank you. I think Christine said last meeting that we had 18,000 and something on the Heritage Committee and 18,000 something in the library, the cemetery committee. So that's $36,000. So when you're talking about getting prices, civil engineers don't come cheap. Arborists, they don't come cheap. And there was one other main person in there that doesn't come cheap. So I can see $38,000, $36,000 going out the door before you put a shovel in the ground. And I don't know what our works department, they've always been able other years to go in and fix a path up, build a bit of a berm. And I think that, I don't know, we should be able to do it in house or some of the work anyway. And with the help of your Heritage Committee, it's all right to spend all this money on one cemetery, but you got another 59 to you got to do the same thing with. So I think that we better just kind of watch what we're doing and do some of this work ourselves and budget for next year. It's too late to budget this year, so we'll have to budget for next year. So that's the way I think I would go about it.
Well, and I guess some of that, in order to budget, we need to know some information. And so if we're going to prepare for next year, we better get that information. I think that's primarily what the focus is right now.
But if we're going to follow up, if we're going to do that to that cemetery, what are you going to do with the other 59?
What would you like to do with the other 59?
Well, I'd like to fix them up too and spend it. We got lots of money. We'll spend it all on cemeteries, never mind the road.
So the only thing I will note is that the reason there seems to be a particular focus on Fulford, as you may recall, this one has a particular heritage designation. The other ones don't.
Some of the others don't.
I don't know that any of the other cemeteries have an official heritage designation. I think this is the only one under our care, if I can put it that way, that has the designation. And that creates some complications in terms of the type of work that we can do has to be consistent with the heritage of that site. The materials that, there are certain restrictions that we need to be sensitive to. So it unfortunately does complicate things. There are reasons for that, but we have to accept that there are complications with that. Councillor Downey?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Brayton in a way that, I think we have to be careful that we don't kind of throw too much resources into one particular cemetery. Because, there is a lot of upkeep, just mowing, for example. And tree care in some of these other cemeteries is quite a large undertaking. Now, I don't think the Heritage Committee's goal was to bring it up to, you know, a certain, you know, level that is, you know,
If I can help you with an analogy, you're not necessarily looking for a Cadillac, a good shiny Volkswagen would be fine.
yeah, not even shiny. Just, you know, people like there's already two neighbors that are squeezing it. They own basically the whole top parking lot, and it comes to a pinpoint.
Yeah.
It's not a spot where you see people like pull into a parking lot and, you know, they're going down and they're investigating and they're checking it out. It's basically just a cemetery that needs to be cleaned up, and because it's built on a hill, just fix the path up a little bit. And I think you would find that everybody would be satisfied at that point. Because my fear is that you budget a whole bunch of money for Fulford Cemetery and then everybody's sick of it. And we don't want to do any more cemetery stuff. Look what that cost us. That's what my fear would be. So we could just tone it down a bit. That would be nicer.
So I don't know if it's going to make the council feel any better at this point. Neither this motion nor the one that's coming up in a few minutes from now actually commits an expenditure. So I think we still have an opportunity to understand, once we get those numbers in front of us, we may very well be talking about, you know, a sticker shock item. We may get the money back and say, oh, well, you know what? You know, for the sake of that few $1,000s, there's good value in understanding what work we have to do so we do it once and we don't have to go back 5 years from now and repair those same repairs. So there's that opportunity coming. I don't know whether that makes the council feel any better, but there's no commitment of money tonight around these motions. So there's still an opportunity to change the path if that's the will of council. Councilor Olsher.
Yeah, we seem I'm supportive with Councilor Downey here that I don't really want to hire professionals to do assessments there, even though maybe that'll come out in the report, just a touch up to a facelift to make it presentable. But I'm going a little further. I was disappointed with the cemetery report and I didn't really state it last week. And maybe it's because my expectations were different than what staff was going to do. And that's my problem more than anything, but in it, there was no talk about the other 60. And any effort to stop or assist the management of other cemeteries. Because the one I'm in, I've got 2 members that want to drop it. It looks like it might be coming here. And it's got $5,000 in the account, $5,000 in the account, and it's got 100 sold spots, and it's got 200 empty spots ready to be sold. You know, but nobody's buying. You know, and now with urns, you don't have to buy as much as you used to. You can have 2 or 3 urns in one plot. Used to be you needed a plot for every person. Now you don't. So it's a whole different ballgame out there managing these things. And then I'll just go further. So we have a cemetery on our farm that in my 50 years of farming, 47, township staff has been in there once with a whippersnapper 40 years ago, not since. And the family, I just noticed it was the last 2 years, last family member passed away that did have right of way to it. So who is going to look at it or manage it, or, you know, it's briars and brambles now. And how many of the 60 are like that? That's my question. How many are 60 are out of sight and out of mind. You say there's 60 registered, I'm curious, I don't need the answer tonight, I'm curious. Like, there's some along the road, there's one on Greenbush along the road, there's one on Jelby Road along the road, and Bell's Crossing is along the road, but how many are out of sight and out of mind that we don't manage, even though we're our responsibility?
Well, is it council's appetite, and I don't know how much work this would be, so I'm gonna turn to our deputy clerk just to get a sense of whether we have records that would be easily accessible, or whether this will be an onerous project. If council had a will to have a report at least of where are these 59 or 60 that we identified and we know of, then at least we can personally compare those and say, okay, so that doesn't capture the two that I know of that I drive by every day, or what have you. Is that an owner's task, or?
I have a drawer full of files. They each have a file. There's not a lot in those files, to be quite honest with you. But I mean, I can certainly do that. That's not an issue. A lot of them are on private property. And there are several that they're like within acreage, like, you know, people that have acreage and
Right.
farmland and. But I can certainly put something together that would show you where they are.
I think.
And you know, to put it in perspective, it doesn't necessarily have to be a high priority item, you know, but
No,
if it's something that council is interested in, it doesn't sound to me like it would be an overly onerous process to do something over, I'm gonna say 3 months, like, you know, to come back
Okay,
later in the summer. So is that something that council is interested in?
I think it should be done there somewhere.
Okay, seems to be, do you want a specific motion around that or direction? Okay, so we've got a motion on the table. We'll deal with this first, and then I'll allow somebody to float that motion and get that dealt with. So any further discussion around this one, Mr. Smith?
So on this discussion. So I'm gonna throw this out, how many takers. Okay, so I don't disagree that, as we all know, iron engineers cost money. We know what's in their reserves, in the heritage reserve, we know what's in the cemetery allotment. And why don't we just go ahead with the clearing the brush and the dead trees and looking after the pathway right now. Going forward for next year's budget is where I would suggest to put dollars and cents in for engineering, for your rock wall and everything else that needs to be done, where we know that's gonna cost and needs the expertise. Got a flavor of that? Like, all I'm saying is, let's just target 2 items, and I don't think we need an engineer to tell us, you know, trim trees and fix the pathway at this point in time. That's just my thoughts.
So I'm very open to the idea of the trees, and I'm interested to hear what the rest of the council has to say. The only question I have around the pathway is, my understanding is the neighbors have changed the lay of the land and done some work that may be impacting that pathway. We know that we may be restricted in some of the materials we can use on the pathway based on the heritage designation. That's, the pathway is one of those, unless we're just going to use volunteers to just place some stones back for this year, knowing that effort may very well be wasted come next year when the engineer says, okay, well, that might look good, but it didn't do anything. You know, that may be what we're talking about doing this year. The getting the engineering around the drainage and the impact to the path had some sense to me, simply to make sure that we weren't doing work and then redoing work, or doing work that we shouldn't, because it ruins the heritage of the site. That's my only concern about that, but you know, I'm interested in the views of others for sure. Councillor Down.
The neighbors, they actually fortified the pathway. And there's nothing wrong with the pathway right now, to be honest. It's just got a little bit of moss on it. So if you could even just rake it out and maybe do some tree work like Councillor Smith suggested. And yeah, maybe put a few stones up, but we don't even have to do that. But that was just something that the Heritage Committee looked at in order to, you know, if they were going to put some gravel down. But like, I'll just compare it to line 9, the culvert on line 9. Whatever happened to make that culvert worth $575,000 in the budget. I still, to this day, don't understand it. I don't know, what the heck is going on there to make a box culvert worth $575,000. So that's really what I'm worried about here. Is you all of a sudden balloon out and it's a huge deal. And so I would be in favor of doing that, and maybe next year do something a little more thoughtful as far as the wall goes.
Okay, Mr. Nolan?
Thank you, Your Worship. Some of the discussions from both Councillor Smith and Councillor Downey really are relating to the other report, which is around the staff assessment of the wall. This report really is about maintaining the cemeteries, and really what staff are saying is there's 10 cemeteries that are out there that we have been maintaining. We're going to continue to do that, and we're going to go out in fall and in the spring and get a better idea of what work needs to be done on those, bring that back to council during the budget period so that we have an understanding of what we could and should be doing on those particular cemeteries. Fulford is one of those cemeteries. The recommendation around in-house really comes out of the fact that we have done work, as staff have done work. It has been costly in terms of man hours and in terms of equipment time to do this. Tree work over in the cemetery beside us was about $11,000. So we're just aware that if we are starting to go in and do work as staff, that it's taking away from some of our budget that we've allocated to other areas. And so we just want you to be aware that if we're going to be directed to go and do work in any of the cemeteries from a staff perspective, it will cost time, staff time, equipment time. So happy to do it, but it will cost. And then the other recommendations are really around, let's hear what the Heritage Committee have said that needs to be done there. Let's make sure that we're incorporating that into any work going forward, and let's see if they can come up with some other funding streams.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other discussion then around the broad motion? And again, as our CEO has pointed out, and I mentioned earlier, we do have another motion coming up, I think 3 motions from now, that is targeted specifically at Fulford. Okay, so I'm not seeing anything else on this one. So does anybody want me to read that out again, or we're just going to call it? Okay, so I'm going to call the vote on the motion that I read out some time ago. All those in favor? And opposed, if any? Okay, that carries. All right.
We should have joined what we're doing together.
Well, it's probably not a bad idea that the one is focused only on Fulford, because Fulford ended up overshadowing the intent of the overarching motion. All right, so the next motion coming out of yes, we had all right, so an outgrowth of the discussion we just had, it seemed to be an appetite for a motion as follows: the council directs staff to prepare a report regarding information on all abandoned cemeteries, including locations, to bring to council in August of 2025. So that's satisfactory. If somebody wants to move that, moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Osterhoff. Any discussion on that item? Okay, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. On to another one coming out of the minutes then. The motion is that council approve amending the township's insurance policy to include the volunteer accident coverage at a cost of $150 per year, as presented in report A-25-33 during the May 5th, 2025 committee of the whole meeting. I'm looking for a mover and seconder for that, please. Moved by Councillor Renault, seconded by Councillor Brayton. Any discussion on this item? Okay, all those in favor? And opposed, if any? Okay, that carries. Also from the minutes, the council adopt report F-25-08, which meets the requirements of the regulation in preparing the 2024 and 2025 budgets in a PSAB compliant format, as presented in report F-25-08 during the May 5th, 2025 committee of the whole meeting. A mover and seconder there, please. By Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Down. Any discussion on this one? Okay, all those in favor? That carries. Thank you. And here is the infamous motion from the committee of the whole regarding Fulford Cemetery. The motion as it is now is the council direct staff to receive quotations for professional services to complete a thorough assessment of the existing conditions and a proposed long-term rehabilitation site specific work plan as presented in report PW 25-11 during the May 5th, 2025 committee of the whole meeting. Looking for a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Renault, seconded by Councillor Down. So now if we want to continue on, but I will clarify that as a result of the discussion at the committee, we tweaked that motion so that rather than directing staff to engage to get those services, staff is being directed to get quotations, so we'll have an understanding of how much that work will even cost us. So that's what this motion is about at the moment. So with that, I'll open the floor. I think Councillor Smith.
So my only question then is, are, through you staff, are we going out hiring an engineer to come back and give you the quotations? Or are we just going to get quotations for services? We're professional, costs us a lot of money. And it goes back to my comment from the last meeting, committee report. If we just target right now, they say that the trees, for an example. And we know it's a safety thing, and I think that needs to be taken precedent. I think if we going through this, my thing is we're gonna hire an engineer that's gonna take probably a good chunk of the money we got in both heritage reserves and the cemetery allotment. That's my concern. That's why I was making a comment about perhaps we put into a budget item for next year for the professional engineering services in regards to the rock wall, erosions and everything else. Well,
Yeah, so I guess it's only a case of timing because I don't understand how we could put it into the budget for next year until we understand the scope of the number that would be entailed to do that. And as I read the motion, unless I'm wrong, the start of the motion is the council directs staff to receive quotations for those professional services. So I think all we're looking for is quotes. So that we understand, is this a $5,000 or $50,000 thing to get this work plan developed?
As I said, okay, through you to staff, so is that the route we're taking? That's why I'm not.
I'll get you in a second.
Your worship, through you to Councillor Smith. Yes, what I would like to do is set up an RFP structured with the 4 points, so having an arborist. Scope of work for to assess the trees, make sure that we're not taking away black ash or something silly, should say so, or something that should stay there. And then I want to have a section for civil works to look at the drainage in the neighboring property. And then it's section for the structural analysis of the wall and make sure that we follow the heritage aspects and make sure we hit the targets. And then have another section scope for the shoreline assessments to make sure we couldn't stop the erosion. The idea would be, well, I'll put a disclaimer in there that it will be what can be awarded as a whole or in pieces, so that if you like consultant A's price for the shoreline, you like consultant B's for the structural wall, and then it goes back to you guys. You decide if you want all of it, none of it, pieces of it, and we can try. You guys can prioritize it and tell me who to.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Downer, you have your hand up.
Well, so it goes back to what Councillor Smith said there. I think we could get a better idea if we want to get a price on trees, maybe the wall, is phone some companies that do that. The section of wall, not an engineering company. The section of wall that's affected is two pieces of wall that are probably 6 to 8 feet long each. And actually the actual only spot where the water goes through is that wide. That cemetery was established in the 1800s, and the same path has been going down there for all these years. The water has always been going down there. It's a good path. So anyways, I don't support getting an engineering company involved. I would support getting a stonemason, a couple stonemasons that give a price and see what they suggest. You don't need engineers to do everything. It's a wall. That's it. It's just a rock wall.
Okay, and Mr. Metcalf?
Just to follow up to that point, I understand the apprehension to hire professional engineers or professionals in general to do some of these works, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that it's an access point. So there's certain safety standards that we need to make sure we adhere to. And there's also some accessibility concerns so that we don't fall in and make a bigger problem for us down the road by not having it actually looked at as a holistic thing or a holistic approach to make sure that we're meeting all of the legislative requirements. We don't find ourselves getting in trouble for doing something that we shouldn't have or didn't think of, because I think that's kind of what we're paying for, is that arm's length protection from the third party to make sure we're not getting into trouble.
Councillor Down?
I think that the Heritage Committee's first mistake was asking for help, but we almost have to tie it, if this is the way that you're thinking, we almost have to tie that in with all the rest of the cemeteries. In my opinion. When you get a report back, how much money does this township want to spend on fixing up cemeteries?
How
For
much-
engineering.
Yeah, well, that is the underlying question. It's a really good one, Councillor Downey, is, you know, and this is something I don't think that many councils, councils from many terms have really wrapped their heads around. And it seems more in the last, I'm going to say decade, maybe a little more, that these things are falling into our laps now. So the problem is growing. And maybe that's why it's come into focus now, that we're wanting to at least try and tackle it in some way. Councillor Rowe, I think it's already good.
Yeah, my head is spinning. We don't actually have to do the work once we get the quotes. So we don't actually have to spend any more. And maybe we get the quotes and then we just go get the mason to do the stone. That could be the answer. Right? Am I understanding that? We don't have to do it just because we get.
No, and I think to be fair to the marketplace, if there's no appetite to proceed with that work, then just going out to getting the quotes is a useless exercise. So if we're at that point where it doesn't matter what the number comes back as, we just don't like that approach, then yeah, we might as well decide that tonight and do ourselves and the marketplace a favor and maintain our reputation, that we don't just waste everybody's time. If there's a genuine, I'm gonna call it lack of understanding, lack of appreciation for what those numbers are and what might be entailed, then it's a useful exercise to go out to the marketplace and get that. Because we might be pleasantly surprised, or as some of the councillors have expressed, we might be just as shocked as we expect to be. I personally don't know where it's gonna land. Mr. Noel?
Through your worship, we discussed tonight around budgeting for next year. How much are you going to budget? Do you know how much even this cemetery will take in terms of the work that needs to be done? And that's really what we're trying to get you to, is an understanding of here's the work that needs to be done, here's what it may cost. Figure out which ones you want to do now, figure out which ones you want to put to the next year. But if you don't have a number, you're going to be having a hard time budgeting for next year.
And follow up, Councillor.
Well, you put that out, can we say in it somehow, okay, we have no idea what this may cost us. We may not be able to afford it right this minute. It may not happen for a year. Just so that they don't think we're only going out to find out, because if you have no idea what you have or what you're gonna spend, how are you gonna ever get it done?
Okay, and anybody else? Okay, so Councillor Brayton?
Thank you. As Royal said, he gets a price. We can do the job. We don't have to do the job, but we'll know what it is. That's simple. Like, what do I not understand about that? So I think that we can make a motion and carry on.
Okay, does anybody want me to read the motion out again that we have in front of us?
Yes.
Okay, so it is the council direct staff to receive quotations for professional services to complete a thorough assessment of the existing conditions and a proposed long-term rehabilitation site-specific work plan as presented in report PW 25-11 during the May 5th, 2025 committee of the whole meeting. And I'll just remind you that particular report was about Fulford Cemetery. So it's providing direction to staff to go and get quotations for the professional services we've just been discussing, not to execute them, to get the quotations. All right, so with that clarity, I'll go ahead and call the question then. All those in favor? And opposed, if any? Okay, thank you. That does carry. This is almost getting towards the end of the committee of the whole minutes. There's another motion out of those minutes. The council approves staff to proceed with issuing the tender for the replacement of the Lynn Valley Road Bridge as approved in the 2025 budget. And the council directs the CAO and treasurer to enter into a purchase order agreement for the procurement of the deep corrugated structural plate DSP low profile arch as presented in report PW 25-12 during the May 5th, 2025 committee of the whole meeting. So can I get a mover and seconder for that? By Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Brayton. Any discussion around this item? Councillor Downey.
When you say submit a purchase order, do we not get a chance to lay eyes on the bids when they come in and decide, or does that just happen if they pick, if a low bid comes in, they pick it and give the PO, or do we get to review it at all?
I think it depends on signing authorities and what has already been approved. So I'm going to turn to staff for the details on that.
Yeah, you're specifically right, your worship, that it depends on the signing authorities, the value of the contract. Some will have to come back to you if they're of a certain level, but once you've approved a budget, and as long as it's within the budget and it's within our signing authority, staff have the ability to go and execute those contracts.
But I thought that this project was going to be tendered basically to a general contractor that was going to build the bridge. Is that how it's going to be written?
Overall, yes, but I think the exception is we want to secure the best pricing as quickly as possible for the most expensive element, and that is the steel arches for the culverts. So I think that's why that's broken out separately. But Mr. Metcalf, are you prepared to answer that?
Your worship, through you to Councillor Ed. So the idea is we're going to pre-purchase the steel, the deep steel CSV culvert. The idea being that we will secure the pricing, like the mayor said, and we actually won't be paying anything. So we'll give them, like, if you want to call it a post-dated check, is to secure the production line. And then once the main contract is awarded, there'll be a line item in there as a cash allowance for, we'll say $90,000, which is the cost of the materials. And once they've been awarded the contract, which will hopefully come back to you guys for you guys to approve. And then we will transfer that PO with the successful supplier to the contractor's name, and then it's theirs. They've already built that into their contract to pay for the materials.
Councillor Downey?
Yeah, I agree with that. I remember discussing that a while back. But so then, is that the portion of the contract we're talking about, or are we talking about the general contractor?
No, the portion where we would basically pre-authorize the CAO and treasurer to enter into the purchase order specifically with regards to the culvert materials. The overall is to simply issue the tender for the replacement of the bridge, and our normal procurement policies would have that come back to us.
Yeah, well, that's where I thought maybe that part of it was just going through staff, and we had nothing to do with it.
No, we will definitely be able to get our eyes and hands on that. It's just the culvert material.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on this one? Okay, all those in favor then? That carries, thank you. And I believe this is the last motion to come out of the committee of the whole minutes. It is that council receives and files correspondence items 1, 2, and 3. And the council refer correspondence items 1 and 2 to staff as discussed under correspondence during the May 5th, 2025 committee of the whole meeting. I'm looking for a mover and seconder there, please. Moved by Councillor Renault, seconded by Councillor Smith. Any discussion on that direction? Okay, all those in favor? That carries, thank you. All right, that finishes section 5. So now we're into staff reports, item 6.1. The motion is that report B-25-05 regarding our April 2025 building activity report be received. A mover and seconder there, please. Moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Renault. Any discussion around this one? Councillor Ostroff.
When it comes to the septic permits, are any of the Cataraqui or the Rideau regional authorities, do they have any grants available to help people build septic systems, or?
None that I'm aware of to our staff. Are you aware?
Because I'll just, if I could add.
Yeah, sure.
Because I read the flyer from Augusta Township, and they have a note in there to all residents that there is.
Okay.
and they're notifying residents that they should contact for assistance.
Okay, that is something
It's just-
interesting. I see our staff jotting notes, so I'm sure that that's something they'll investigate and come back and let us know.
If we could.
Would that not be South Nation? In Northwest?
Um,
Yeah, I was over at both.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think
Okay,
Cataract extends into Augusta. I think they have to deal with, I think they're opposite to us. They're mostly South Nation and they deal with a little bit of Cataract, whereas we're a lot of Cataract, and we have a little corner that's South Nation.
Because I would think it's South Nation that has that.
Maybe,
Do you want me to read the note or not, or just pass it to staff?
yeah, if you could pass it to staff and then they can come back. Thank you for raising that. Any other discussion around this report? Okay, all those in favor? That carries, thank you. All right, getting back to item 6.2. This is regarding tender results. The motion is that report PW 25-13 tender results regarding RFT PW 2025-02 be received. And the council direct staff to complete scope definition to complete the work approved in the 2025 budget. I need a mover and seconder to get that on the floor, and then imagine there'll be some discussion. Moved by Councillor Downey, seconded by Councillor Smith. Before we get into our discussion, I'll give staff an opportunity. Is there anything that you want to add before we get going, Mr. McCaff?
So you sure, I could just fire.
Okay, fair enough then. Okay, so I'll open up the floor for discussion around this. Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, as we know, most of us know that these contractors are bidding on jobs much earlier than May. And that might trigger a reason why I only see one bid here. When we tender out a job in May, a lot of these contractors already have their seasoned work already lined up. Can you add, is there any other reason why we didn't get more than one bid?
Go ahead.
Through your chair, Councillor Smith. I'm not entirely sure why there's only one bid. I do agree with you. These, in a perfect world, this should be set end of March, beginning of April. Unfortunately, we weren't able to meet that target for. But we're on the schedule with Rita Lakes, which they're proposed in February.
Okay, Councillor Renault?
Is there actually more than one company in our area that does those microsurfacing?
I believe so.
I'm pretty sure.
Mr. McCaff?
I don't know.
Through your chair to Councillor, so there's two companies that I'm aware of off the top of my head that do the microsurfacing, which would be Miller's and Duncore. This contract is for the pre-work ahead of the microsurfacing, so it's the type lighting and patching and shouldering, which we sent the tender was sent to 6 individual companies, and the 7th reached out via the website for the tender and one responded.
Okay, and if I can, I'm just gonna jump on the coattails of Councillor Renault there. Is it appropriate to ask whether Miller is one of the ones that ordinarily would be equipped to do this type of work? I know they didn't respond to this, but.
They sub it in, I guess, is the easiest way to say it.
Okay,
So they don't actually do that specific scope of work, but they hire third-party contractors to do it for them ahead of, so.
Okay.
In some municipalities, they'll do the full, the tender will be for everything at once, Miller will bid it, and then they'll sub it to a certain company, I won't say names, locally, and then, or another company that's some semi-locally, or somebody from like the Ottawa region, or wherever they're working, they'll pull in the local talent, so to speak, that can compete for.
and I'll tell you the motivation behind me asking the question is that, my analogy is with, auto body work and paint jobs. Right, as a painter, you rely on the body guy. Your paint job can look horrible if they don't do the prep work. So based on the education session, when Miller was saying, look, we don't want to educate you and advise you on work that we know is going to fail.
Mhm.
It just surprised me that they didn't express an interest in this work, knowing that they're going to go and do their final process on top of this work. And it's going to be their work that people are going to associate with either success or failure. So that's why I was curious to know what the circumstances, but if they sum it out, that provides a lot of clarity. Okay, so I saw Councillor Downey and then over to Councillor Smith. Go ahead, Councillor Downey.
Were you able to look at the questions that I submitted from Mr. Morrison.
So you're sure yes to Kessler, and do you want me to go off from one by one, or do you want me to just give you a bulk answer, or I don't know.
If you have a bulk answer that answers all five, that'd be good.
Okay, so so council approved the project through the budgeting process, so and we followed the procurement policy. So there isn't anything within the procurement policy to provide the tender and or addendums to council to be reviewed. So I don't understand the guys beyond that. What easy if I read the questions and the answers. So the tender and the addendum were available through the website. If council or mayor wishes to see those, I guess we need to, ask, but I don't send anything to council. Unless I'm asked to, I don't, it would go through the CAO. So the tender, so having sat in on the special council meeting, with Miller Group and reviewing the addendum 1 contractor questions and answers, makes me wonder how the tender was developed and did the other contractors find it biased or targeted to one provider only? The answer is no. The tender was built in a manner to allow 2 possible operations to be able to complete the specified work, and the contractors were free to bid it according to the method of their choice. So for the type plating, I included 2 special provisions, one to do as a type plating with a motor grader and boot, and I specified it with a tailor laid method so that they could use, so it was open to anyone. Did staff follow up with the other suppliers to understand why they did not submit a bid, knowing those reasons might inform the decision between which option to proceed with? Like I said, 6 contractors were invited, and a 7th took the bid off of, registered for bid off of the website. It's not standard practice for me to follow them if they haven't bid. I deal with the people that do bid and leave it at that. It just would be very cumbersome if you get a large number of bids. Rather small group with the number of bids, but I just don't typically follow up with people if they don't submit a bid. If Miller did help with the tender, then why is the tender bid so far off the estimate used in the budget? Miller Group was not consulted for input regarding the creation of tender. Miller Group wasn't actually brought into the conversation until after the tender closed with Rio Lakes. So, because I didn't figure, well, the sanctum of following through on the protocols for proper open fair tendering, I waited until after that was closed, and then they were the low bidder. It hadn't been awarded, but then I researched them to make sure they're one of the experts in the field to make sure that what we were proposing made sense, and then we've had all those rigorous conversations. So, yeah, they had nothing to do with it.
Can I just stop you there then? So was it you then that developed the tender?
Yes.
And what was what do you think? Do you think that some of the people that you asked to bid it would have brought it in on budget?
Pardon me?
Well, if you gave it out to 6 and a 7th got it online, like, where did you come up with the budget being $200,000 less than it was?
Well, I can't really speak to how this contractor did it. I have my speculation as to why. There's one asphalt plant in the area. So I believe they're probably forced to buy it from a local supplier, and they're adding markup to it. That's my speculation. And part of the bid in the tender through creating it, I did everything. So I was sure that everything we discussed, all the patches, they didn't cut anything out. It was exactly everything that needed to be completed. So the quantities were higher in a sense than what I guess they thought they could do for that money. Based on the calculations that I did, that budget should be this good. I just don't understand. Maybe it's the timing, maybe it's the supplier issue. I'm not sure what they came up with in their bid. I don't bid the bid.
Well, that's the kind of information that I think we need to pick an option, because it's, in my opinion, is way too much money over budget. So not sure how to follow through. There was just one more question we asked.
Well, yes, two more technically. One was a yes, which I know. I guess the last question. In the tender documents, it notes the timeline is to be done by July 2025, July 31st. That seems optimistic and aggressive. Did that discourage other bids? If it was a longer window of completion, would others have bid? Again, in a perfect world, we would have the tender completed, closed, and awarded earlier in the year, so we wouldn't base this. However, that being said, with giving the report tonight and being able to award it on May 16th, with a completion date of July 31st, that's 76 working days, excluding holidays and weekends. And if you assume, which I do this sometimes, make some assumptions, we assume the production rate of the contractor's forces for 2/3 of the work at 0.25 kilometers per hour and 0.125 kilometers an hour of production, we can safely assume that the contractor could complete the work within 208 hours or 20.8 10-hour working days. And if I add a 15% contingency to that, it would be 31 working days. There's 76 days. So it's a 3 to 4 week process to complete the work. It's 6.5 kilometers. It's not, we're not doing, from Maori Town to Brockville on 401.
Yeah. What would be the harm in letting that go further out into September, October?
The fact that we're tied to Miller's schedule when they're with Frito Lakes, so when they come to do theirs, they're just moving it to ours. And the other side of that is you get too unpredictable weather in September. So for the HL2 modified or the HL3 modified, you need it to be 18 degrees or rising with no forecast of rain.
So Miller's schedule kind of sets the bar.
Okay, so I'll move on if, oh, sorry, Mr. Nolan, go ahead.
Just to summarize and probably to summarize, we followed the procurement process here. Staff did what they had to do in order to get competitive tenders into the open and transparent. We had one bid. And now staff have presented you with 3 different options here on how to proceed. And really what we're looking for is what of those do you think is reasonable? And again, Royal was prepared to talk about, discuss what each of those options are and the pros and cons of those.
Okay, so before we get into the details of the options, are there any more questions around the fact that we've only got one and it's over budget and that type of thing? Nobody else. I have one follow-up question on. Yep, Councilor Downey.
Well, we just 3 weeks ago, we fussed, rightly so, over Brockville possibly only get a tender, one tender on a $15,000 job.
Yep.
So I think we have to really try and stick to our budget, number one. But number two, I think we need 2 tenders at least.
Okay, Mr. Metcalf.
Just follow. The procurement policy doesn't speak to having a number of tenders
No,
received.
no.
The policy speaks to how many have to be asked for and how it gets asked for and the timeframes.
Yeah.
But if you get none of one, that's not in the policy.
Yeah, and I think we all understand that. I don't want to put words in Councilor Downey's mouth, but I understand that the conventional wisdom that you're never in a good spot if you're making a yes/no decision. It's always better to be in a which one decision. And then so I think that's the point about it always feels uncomfortable if you only have one choice with a price associated with. That's the most uncomfortable position to be in. It's never viewed as a great thing. I think I saw Councilor Mills. Yeah.
Okay, if we only got one, nobody else put their name in for it. If we go back out, probably nobody's gonna put their name in for it because it still has to be done on this timeline. If we don't do this, then we don't do Miller's top thing, the microservicing. Are we liable there for breaking that contract?
Interesting point. Mr. Nolan.
Your worship, I haven't seen the contract, and that's the one with Frito Lakes. So.
Yeah, I don't believe we'd be liable. I mean, unfortunately, I've had to break a contract similar with Miller's, like the day they were ready to do it, and they were very amicable and didn't charge the municipality, thankfully. But I don't believe there's anything in that contract that would charge us, but there are, it's, sorry to back up a bit to the mayor's comment. There are two viable options where we aren't found a yes or a no, like we can get a reduced scope price from the one tender. And we can get another price through change order with Miller's. And that they would sell it to whomever. And so we could be looking at it. Apples and oranges or maybe one or the other. So I don't believe that there's a penalty for canceling it. It just means that we won't get any work done in the position.
Okay, anybody else?
Oh, here are the options.
So before we leave that and discuss the options in detail, I rarely like comparing operations at a lower tier with operations at an upper tier, but sometimes there's benefit to just sharing approaches and information. The county does not do a detailed forensic analysis on every tender either, but when something unusual comes forward, generally there's an effort for staff to go back and try and understand how it landed that way, so that if there's something we're doing, we can avoid that happening again. So I'm not saying that it needs to be baked into our procurement policy. I would suggest, unless council feels differently, this might be one of those cases where if we're to reach out to some of the other six or, some of the other participants to get a better understanding. So for instance, did council's reluctance and the fact that we had to get the education session and our budget was what it was on its timeline, are we responsible for the short time window? And did the short time window eliminate one or two other players from coming to the table? I think we need to understand that. It's okay to hold staff's feet to the fire, but if we need to accept some responsibility, we need to understand that so that we don't make that same mistake at budget time next year and those types of things. So I offer that as a suggestion. This may be a case where staff might want to do a little bit of follow-up to gain a bit of an understanding. Would council agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Sure.
things are nodding heads.
Just touch on that. I think I can surmise that the other six probably did not bid based on the window time frame. As I stated, majority of the big contractors have their summer already scheduled, and when we have a time frame and say it's got to be done by this date, they probably couldn't fit it into their schedule. And then that's guaranteed. My opinion, that's probably why they probably did not bid. And as Mr. Metcalf stated, shouldn't say we're on the mercy of Miller, but we're tied in with Rideau Lakes, and it's more of a juggling act, in my opinion. But it is, it's always the question of the dollars and cents, and why are we so over budget? But when you only get one tender, that's why I want to hear your rationale for option number one and the pros and cons of option number one.
All right, so unless there's further discussion at this level, then I'm going to invite Mr. Metcalf to explain some of the pros and cons and details around the options that have been presented to us to deal with that.
I just want to say one other thing is that as a contractor for the last 40 some years, sometimes when you are busy and there's a tender closing, you could throw a high price at the job. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yep.
And if the people pick it up and they go with it, you're gonna be successful in that job. You're gonna make lots of money. But I don't think the taxpayers would understand spending extra money if we aren't sure that the price that we're being told is a good price. So that's the, in private industry, that's fine. But when it's taxpayers and public dollars, there has to be some good reasons. So I would agree with you that an explanation with some follow-up would be good information.
All right, so with that, I'll turn over to Mr. Metcalf to help us explore and understand the options.
Right. Option one is negotiate with the one proponent and to see if it reducing the quantities and the scope of work to meet the approved budget. So that would mean that we would have to cut out. So there's large sections that I wanted to cut the asphalt out and lay in like full lane widths and tie in the intersection at ceiling. So we have to cut those off and do minimal if any patching, and just build the tank layer on top of it. With the micro, it potentially could reduce the service life from that best, like you talked about the Cadillac and the rusty Volvo. It does bring it down in somewhere in the middle, not to the bottom end, but it does, you do give up, that longevity. It's a risk of giving up. There's not no guarantee that you're going to, but there's a risk of reducing the service life based on the limited funds. Option 2 is to cancel the tender and reissue the tender with a reduced scope of quantities. I don't believe that's really a viable one because of the timeframes that we have to follow. And then option 3 is initiate a contemplated change order through the previously awarded microservicing contract with Miller Group to complete the reduced scope in quantities, and then source another contractor that can put it in their schedule. There were lots of questions that came back through and clarifications within the tender. Not one question was is the July 31st a hard and fast date? It could have been adjusted, and I would have been reached out to Millers and said, okay, can we be at the end of August, or can we be, where are we at for schedule? That could have been a conversation, but nobody asked that question. Go ahead.
All right, well, I have my own thoughts, but I'm not gonna share them. That's not fair to pull rank, so I'll open the floor for discussion around the options.
I
Councilor Smith.
think option 2 is off the table. I don't think we can really cancel this tender, go back out to tender again. You put it out to 7 companies and only 1 bidder. Who else is going to be up there? I don't know. Going to as far as reduce the quality and the scope of work just to meet our budget. Because I recall the conversation we had with Miller Group when we were here that we were isolating, or such as filling the holes. Is that correct to say?
Yep.
And from what I'm hearing is that we're cutting chunks out and laying asphalt in. So there's probably the cost savings for that. How much? I don't know. I'm not an expert in that. But that's probably the only reduce quantity of scope of work that I can see happening. Shouldering, we gotta have to shoulder no matter what. I think it comes down to how we're gonna fill these holes. Are we fill the holes, or we cut the holes out and repatch or whatever? But that's a discussion to have. I don't see us going back out there unless Miller says, oh yeah, sure, let's extend it to whatever. Then you might, but all I'm saying is that when you set a date, I'm a firm believer, when you set a date, you set a date. That's tender date, that's the way it is, but you can't, like you said, I know in tenders, you always say, are there any questions? And people fire questions back, but I do believe if I was a contractor at this point in time, my summer's all booked. So.
I think I saw your hand go up. If we might have to party that.
Right, yeah, I guess, sorry, through your chair, I don't have an exact number, but because I would have to reach out to both GIP and Millers to get the pricing, but I think it's in the neighborhood. I feel confident that I could get both of them under the 500,000 that's left in the budget. But it's just like you said, whether or not we just fill in the holes and don't cut them. That's the question. I do believe that doing that will work. Like I said, the high end level was cutting in big sections and taking them, correct? But we're trying to give you the best.
Okay, anybody else? Councilor Rollstrap?
Well, I think we're headed in the right direction. What else can we do? I think we're headed in the right direction, so.
Okay, anybody else?
What do you mean by that?
Well, we're gonna, option number 1. And we expect staff to negotiate with the quality of the job.
It's quantity, it says not quality.
quantity and scope of work, okay, but the end of the result is
Less quality.
problem.
Yeah.
If we're not putting asphalt in those holes and we're just,
Well, I think the difference, we're gonna put it in, it's a case of how it's gonna get put in. Is it gonna get put in as a tight blading operation, or is it gonna get dug out, patched fully, and then surfaced over? Mr. Metcalf?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you're exactly right. Yeah, like, so for example, in Kitley line 8, like we had put in sections to cut out that first piece right next to 29, take it down 50 mils, shape it, and then lay in a new surface and then put the micro on top of it with several sections to try and get that marbly stuff off the top. Now, the tight blading with the HO2 will go over that and bridge it and then surface and just, you may not get as long of life out of it because there is something going on there, right? So that's.
Yeah. Councilor Downey?
So could you keep the quality and reduce the quantity? Is that something that,
No,
or not really?
not really, no, because for example, Howe Road, there's 1,000 square meters to be cut out and patched it over. And it's 67, no, 12,450 square meters total, so you're like at 1%. So that's quite a bit. So I mean, if you cut it drastically down to where they try and get into the budget, you're almost, there's no point in doing anything at that point, right?
No. No, that's what I'd be worried about is that, you know, the contractor will give back 50-cent dollars and you're gonna give them a lot less to do. So it's tricky. It's gonna be tricky because I'm not sure exactly how that's gonna get pulled off.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Metcalf, when I read through the tender, I believe we have the flexibility that we don't have to go ahead and award all of this work to the contractor.
That's right.
So my own view on this is that this is a real test year, as I've been saying all along, like, you know, collectively, you as being a champion of a different way of doing things this year, we went through that education session, council became comfortable with it. I've used this term before. This is the litmus test year. We're either going to be heroes or zeros collectively. So what I would hate to do is have us reduce the specific quantities of the types of works that ultimately ends up lowering the quality to come in under the budget. You're telling us now that it might not last as long. We might understand that and accept it, but I can pretty much guarantee the ratepayers are going to forget this 2 years from now when the road is breaking up. They're going to say, see, I told you it was a stupid thing to do. Personally, I would much rather reduce the scope of the work that gets done in terms of the total meters of road that gets looked after and still do it at a quality where we can be fairly confident of the decisions that we've been made. I would much rather do 70% of the road work that we said we were going to do and have it last the way we said it was going to last than do all the road work we said we were going to do and have residents quite rightly be able to point back to us and say, you see, we told you that would never work. Now that's just me, but I don't know. I think we have all the flexibility to be able to do that if that's the way the council wants to go. Am I right in thinking that we could approach it that way? So just as an option, I hate to do this, but maybe we only do half of Howe Road. Maybe we do the patching of all of it, but we only do the surface treatment of half of it, or like just some of those creative combinations of how far can we get with the same quality approach and the budget that we have, given the tender that we came back. Is that something you've considered?
Yes, but no.
Okay,
Sorry. So
Fair.
the challenge with, yes, I agree with you, and that's, I think I would agree with that approach. The only hook is, we've already reduced Miller's contract by 50%. So if we take it down anymore, and they're not really pleased that we did that,
yeah.
but we tendered it at the beginning of January, but we had not had any discussions yet, so we put based on the budget numbers that were provided from finance, what we thought we could safely do, we budgeted that.
Right.
With Miller. We didn't budget with Miller, we budgeted it with Rideau Lakes in their tender, and then once we got through the discussions and our actual, closer to the actual budget number and then the other components, we had to reduce it, which is down about 50%. And the thing that's so typically in contract law, you can go, you generally 20% over 20% under before you have to renegotiate contracts and values for overhead and profits and losses. The one thing that saves us is the fact that we were with a much bigger contract with River Lakes. They cut nothing. So when you break out what we cut out, it's about 18%. So we're worth ish. Don't quote me on the numbers, but
Sure.
that's-
I understand the concept.
so we're skirting that line of pushing their tender, their contract into default.
Right, okay.
That's the intent.
Okay, Mr. Nolan?
It's a question for council and for Mr. Metcalf. The third option, which we really haven't talked about a lot, is going back to Miller. Would it make sense to go back to Miller and see if you extended this contract, what would they be doing the work for? Because they may come back in and say, yeah, we can do all of it. Get that extra 50% of the contract, and it might be within our budget.
And does our procurement policy and procurement law give us the flexibility to have that conversation after we've already received this result?
I don't think our procurement policy ties us to, like, we can cancel a tender at any time.
Okay.
Without us having any obligation to any of the bidders.
Okay.
And what we would be needing to look at is what the change order might look like. And whether that's something that would, then again, that could be something that comes back to council as long as council is good with the change order, we can pursue.
Okay, so I'm gonna park that for a moment because I got Councilor Brayton waiting and then we'll come back to that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's exactly what you said is exactly what I've been preaching forever. I've been preaching that. Miller, on the other hand, you tell them Miller's going to get the job of this next year, 10 years from now, because they're the only ones in it. So I think if you went with Miller paving and said, here's what they got, and we did, we went over budget. We're not going to do as much, but we want the quality job. We want it to last. Next year, we'll make sure we have the money in the budget so you can finish it. I think that'd be pretty simple.
So that sounds to me like that segues into option 3. Like that's one of the ways to get there.
Well, that's, you said yourself that you'd rather do half the road and do it right. And I've been preaching that forever.
Yep, look, sitting in
And you listen to us.
sitting in a different pew, we're in the same church.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Mr. Nolan?
So I would just caution to make sure that we are following procurement processes, so we're not guaranteeing anybody future work that
Yes.
we are going through a procurement process.
Councilor Downey?
Just the quality aspect of it, I think, is important.
It is.
Because we've had a lot of people who are interested in this new approach that we're doing. Royal came up with a tender that will probably do the job, the quality part of it.
Yeah.
So I think if there's any way we could get the quantity down to within our budget, that would be the ideal solution.
Councilor Smith?
So I don't disagree with comments. The only question I have is back to our staff, Mr. Metcalf. We made it clear that we already reduced Miller Group portion of the project. And you said there's only a 20%, give or take. We're down to 18 now. So 2%, you think you can do this in 2%? This is my concern. My concern is, I agree with Councilor Brayton, and we had that discussion when we were here that night during budget that we said, well, this is all we can afford, this is all we're going to do. And I don't disagree with that. My thing is, we're over a budget line item here, and we've got to try to correct ourselves, or we're going to be pulling an overage. But I think if we can scale it down, my concern is scaling it down. What is that going to do with the Miller Group contract?
Well, you don't have the money.
2%.
Well, and no, it's a fair question, and I guess fold into your answer, does option 3 help with that in any way, shape, or form?
It may, because it gives them back money that they had thought they were going to get. I mean, the tender with River Lakes clearly stated that it was all, based on council approval for budget.
Sure.
So I mean, it's not that we guaranteed them that much work, it was,
Yeah.
a block, so I feel like they should get that, but I mean, at the same time, they've been in the game long enough, they understand the language and understand how that works.
Well, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I also feel compelled to say, we have to be sensitive to treating the vendors in those spaces respectfully as well. And even if there were 10 of them, we don't want our reputation to be either we don't know what we're doing or we don't treat people well or what have you. So there's an element of that as well. So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So, yes, I mean, giving them some more money within that contract might help with that relationship. If council wished, I could start with option 1 and 3. And like I said, then you guys could be looking at, okay, so what I could say, okay, what can you get us to? But this is what I'm thinking, like I'm thinking about canceling that basically, we'll just like the telescopic boom rental, gone, we'll just do that in-house. We have a ditching budget, we can just use some of that money. So that's gone right off the top, and that's some money. And then the patching, that's either cut it completely or only do like the very key spots, like on Howe Road. I think there's probably half a dozen spots that I would definitely still want to do, but that's about it. And then on the second concession, I do feel that with the material that the township has been using for like the full patch, you leave it in place, because a lot of that was taking some of that full patch out to make sure that we didn't put the replays with hot mix. So we could skip the patching on second concession, because it's 2 road. The 8th line, there might be a couple spots that I'd like to keep in, but I mean, at the very least, if I had to cut it, I think we could be good with it. My original plan wasn't to do any of that cutting. That just kind of to try and help you guys get through that hard hurdle with the public view and making sure that you get that most out of it, right?
Yep. Okay. All right, Councillor Renaud, sorry, hand up.
He's kind of sort of answered it. But we did put ourselves in this position. We as a council did not make this decision when we should have back in February. So, but if we treat it as a research project, and you have one that you do the cutout, you do the Cadillac version of it, and the rest you don't, and you look at it in 5 years and go, hey, they're both the same, or this didn't last a year. At least then you'd kind of be able to prove one way or the other. But if you only do it one way, you're not going to know that. So that could be a savings.
Okay, Mr. Metcalf.
Yeah, I mean, by not doing the cutting and patching, you're not going to reduce the service life down to 1 or 2 years. County Road 10 going out of Westport, County Road 3 going out of Lansdowne. Those roads were so bad when we did them, and they're still in place now. Like we've got, I'm speaking from experience from when I was with the United Counties. They were done in 2010 and 2012, and they're still good. And I think actually, Peter, last name. He mentioned the County Road 10 guy. Like it's still there. It was worse than first. It was bad. They were bad. I think it had a lot more volume.
Councillor Brayden.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, and I would vote for is what you said. Take the money we got, do what we can, don't take any shortcuts, build the road right. Next year, we'll finish. And Miller Group will have the job, because they're the only ones that does it, so.
And I don't want to sound like I'm backtracking. I said that, and then I was enlightened to the fact that we're very close to reaching a contract. So that puts a slightly different light on it. But I'm very intrigued by combining option 1 and option 3 to get us pretty close to what you and I are talking about, but just a different route to get there. How would council feel about that?
Just to follow up,
Councilor Brayden.
we could maybe ask Miller Group if they'd like to carry us for $200,000 for a year for no interest free. Could you raise that?
Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Christian. What I'm taking from the conversation is we've got a budget. Staff, stick with it. Yep. And it's going to be down to staff to work with the proponents and or Miller to find a solution which maximizes the quality that we're getting within the budget that we've allocated. So I think it might be a combination of 1 and 3. I think leaving it to staff to sort of figure out what that best option is going to look like. Obviously, come back and report to you. This is the way we want to go forward with this. But I would like to sort of give Royal the ability to sort of explore both options.
So in the spirit of that, I have a question for council. There are 2 ways to interpret within budget. Are we focused on a per project basis? Or if Mr. Metcalf already knows based on some other tenders for other work that's come in, that we have some savings elsewhere in the public works budget, and he wants to pull some of those savings in towards some of this work, do we give him that flexibility? And at the end of the year, so long as public works is within budget, are we going to say that we were on budget? Or do we want to see it that every project only comes in and we never overspend on any given project? Both are sort of valid ways of looking at it, but I need some clarity from council. Councilor Roy?
You can't guarantee though that another project isn't going to be what they said it was going to be. Yeah, maybe it's on budget, but we can't guarantee that it's going to be less.
Yeah.
So if you're banking on A being less and B being more, and you're going to take the less to do more, it's kind of a shell game that you're not
Well,
real
to
sure is going to actually happen.
be clear, I'm not talking about any wishful thinking. I'm talking about, I believe we've already had reports that talk about tenders that have come in, so we know that certain work has come
Okay.
in less than what we budgeted.
Oh,
And I'm not directing staff to use those surpluses. I'm asking, is council so focused that it has to be on a per project basis? Or do we allow staff to have that flexibility that if in their opinion, it's prudent to pull 50,000 worth of surplus from other projects that are known into this, do we allow them to do that? So I saw Councillor Down and Councillor Brady.
I think we have to stick with a per project approach. Just look how easily last year, all of a sudden you're $500,000 out, and very hard to grasp where the problem started and where it finished. But all I know is at the end of it, it was there. And that's why we do compartmentalize. And then if there is money left over at the end of the year, that's a great thing to build up reserves for future projects. It's hard to pull money out, and it also forces you to really see what the dollar amounts are from year to year. My opinion is to stick with the per project approach.
Okay, Councillor Brady.
Thank you, I'm just gonna say the same thing as Councillor Downey. Take one thing, look after it, get that done, go with the next one. Just like kindergarten, just do what you're told, go, whatever. And I think that's good for
Anybody else?
Dan, good.
Okay, so I think I heard a consensus develop around giving the staff flexibility across the option 1 and option 3, stick within the budget for the project. And come back and tell us how you're gonna accomplish that. Mr. Metcalf?
Just a point, just a clarification for myself, when you say per project, you mean like they show the matching and the microservicing, or because it was all one project, we just broke it into those 2.
Per tender.
Yeah, so
Per tender,
this,
okay.
yeah, this has gone some 200,000 and change over. And you've presented us options. And so I've heard from council, you're not to go to other road projects that we have already got information back on, and yes, there may be some surpluses developed there. You're not allowed to touch those.
Okay.
You just work within this framework.
Okay, and then another follow-up question, please, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
So for option 1 and option 2, if I go back and either of the contractors come down below the 522,000. Understanding the short time frames, I mean, I am gonna speak to Miller, but obviously with option 3, but I'm gonna start to get a firmer line on their schedule, and if we can extend the date for the contractor 1, that might help them reduce their price. Just rough number, if I figured So I'm not back to the text, but so for what I want to cut with our portion of the HST, it's around 475,000, which is below the 522. So appreciating the time factor, how does this have to come back as a report to council, or can it be done as an update? Because we have the long weekend, right? So then the next time we meet is until the 26th. So then that adds, it reduces the working days by approximately 10 days. And then to the next council meeting, plus another 3 or 4 days to actually execute the agreement. So we're looking at moving 15 of the 76 working days.
Yep.
So now we're down to 60 working days, so it's available.
My sense is, based on the direct, we budgeted a certain amount, we passed the budget. Now we've had a very healthy discussion. We're providing you with some very clear direction. The numbers are the way they are. If you accomplish coming into those numbers, I would say that it can be an update to council. It doesn't have to come back for further approval. I think the approvals already exist, but you know, I'm happy to hear back from council on that, but that's the way that I see it.
I think if you come under budget.
Pretty close. Okay. All right, so does that bring us to a close on this, I think?
That's the combination of option 1 and 3.
Yeah. I think so, too. Okay, I'll go ahead and call the question on that then. All those in favor? Okay, that carries. Thank you. It was a good discussion. And we have a number of committee reports to receive. So this is section 7. So specifically items 7.1 through 7.5. The motion to cover all of that is that the following draft committee minutes be received. Public Library Board draft minutes dated April 16th, 2025. Special Public Library Board draft minutes dated April 23rd, 2025. Committee of Adjustment draft minutes dated April 24th, 2025. Heritage Elizabethtown-Kitley Committee draft minutes dated April 28th, 2025. And Lynn Banshell Ad Hoc Committee draft minutes dated May 6th, 2025. So could I have a mover and seconder to receive all of those, please? Moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Osterhoff. Any discussion around any of those sets of minutes? We do have some motions coming out of at least one, I think, of Banshell. Councillor Osterhoff?
Just minor, I guess, since it's draft, library minutes, one member's name's missing on the first attendance, and that'll be corrected when the minister official that are actually did not their own name down.
Fair enough. Yeah, and only a committee can correct its own minutes, so to be able to you guys to do that, and then perfect. Okay, thanks for.
I don't know if that staff needs this for attendance, that's all.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other
next minutes?
Any other discussion around any set of minutes here? Okay, I'll call that then. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. Coming out of the Lynn Banshell Ad Hoc Committee, there's a motion that council approves the naming of the Banshell structure as the Cheryl Mitchell Memorial Banshell. Mover and seconder for that, please. Moved by Councillor Smith. Seconded by Councillor Brayton. Any discussion around this item? Okay, all those in favor? That carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to section 8, bylaws. We do have a bylaw for first and second reading. The motion is that the mover be granted leave to introduce bylaw number 25-28, being a bylaw to authorize certain new capital works and a submission of an application to Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation. And this shall constitute the first and second reading thereof. So I need a mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Renault, seconded by Councillor Smith. Any discussion around this item? Councillor Smith, go ahead.
Just a quick question. So the application for Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation. What is that application? Are we submitting an application or?
Yes, this was for the I think there's a construction financing component, and then that will get converted into the longer term debentures.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions around this item? Councillor Downey?
So does that include the line 9, 575,000?
Through to staff, I believe so. Yeah, I'm not sure for some of the details here.
Where did
Yes,
we
it does.
where did we come up with the 575 on that project? Like, is there any quick numbers that you could throw at me verbally that would add up to 575?
Mr. Metcalf?
But I respectfully declined to share numbers at this point.
Yeah, I don't know that you have those right in front of you tonight, right?
No, I don't, yeah, I
Right.
apologize. I can come back with some numbers, but I wasn't prepared to talk about it right now, but I don't have any numbers. Sure, I do have some preliminary numbers that I to get to the number, to get to the 500,000. So I can bring it back if we would. I'm hoping to bring back a report soon. I'm still waiting to hear from the consultants doing condition rating for the options that we're proposing. And I also waiting to speak with the residents in the area for the options.
Right.
Then that will come back to you and I can speak with them.
Okay,
And I think we retain the flexibility that the actual debentured amount will be reflective of the final price. So if that price comes down, we're not going to debenture 500 grand for the sake of it. We get it down to 400, we can debenture 400, whatever it is.
yeah, I've just never seen the makeup of the estimate, the 575.
Right.
Okay. Not sure how that was all put together, and I think it's good information, and people are interested.
Sure.
On line 9.
Yeah, I know there's some discussion going on out there for sure. All righty, anything else? Okay, I'll call the question on first and second reading then. All those in favor? That carries, thank you. And we have third reading of that same bylaw. So the motion is the bylaw number 25-28 be given third reading and finally passed, signed, and numbered accordingly. A mover and seconder for that, please. Moved by Councillor Brighton, seconded by Councillor Renault. I guess we've already had our discussion on that one, so I'll just call that. All those in favor? That carries, thank you. Okay, we are now on, I believe, to correspondence items. We have just the one from South Nation. Excuse me, the motion is the correspondence item 1 be received and filed. A mover and seconder for that, please. Moved by Councillor Osterhoff, seconded by Councillor Smith. Any discussion around this particular memo? Okay, not seeing any. All those in favor then receiving that? That carries, thank you. Okay, that brings us to information items. Does any member of council have an information item to share with us this evening? Okay, not seeing any. And so now we get to motions and notices of motion. First, I'll call for any notices of motion by any members this evening. Okay, and at this point, oh, sorry.
Informational items.
Okay, we'll go back one step.
Sure, mine for a second. In regards to the email that Mr. Nolan sent out in regards to the Strawberry Power virtual meeting that's taking place. I believe we read it quickly, May 22nd or something.
Your worship, through your worship, there's 2 dates, so the 22nd and the 29th. The 22nd is more of an information session, with the 29th being a Q&A session. So digest it for a week. If you have any questions, you can come back to the presenters to sort of ask your questions.
So this is a question. I don't know what the schedule will be that day. But is there a way that if we as a council were interested, can we not just come here as a group and put it on the big screen and watch it from here? That way, you know, it gives this council a little bit more of a teamwork, and we may have some discussion amongst ourselves as things are going on. And we might be able to prepare some other questions, you know. Sitting at home in a virtual meeting this time of year may not be productive. And some are out in the field, you know, working. I just open that up if possible, if the opportunity is available, you know, could you book the room? And no one comes, but I'm just saying, might be an opportunity for council to be here if we can be here.
Yep. Mr. Nolan?
Yes, your worship, and to Councillor Smith, we can certainly book the room for the afternoon and make sure that have the presentation done here in chambers. And any of you, all of you, none of you want can attend, and we'll make sure I'll sit and watch it.
Yep.
Didn't read that email yet.
Okay, fair enough. Councillor Renault?
Did he just say the 22nd?
Yes, I know.
Lynn's already booked it one.
Well,
22nd.
yes, but we're in the process of shifting that by a half hour, so it'll be over and done with, so that it opens up the time slot. So the logistics of whether you do it from here or your home or whatever are almost immaterial, but right away when this came out, we saw the scheduling conflict with the interview schedule.
Okay.
And we're
Okay.
working to jig it so that we can open this time slot up.
So you wish one final consideration, if there's a quorum of you, it will be a special council meeting, so we need to post a notice on it.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think we better play it safe and just provide notice based on that assumption, because it's too late to find out and then say, well, we didn't provide notice, so. Councilor Downey?
I just, light went off when you mentioned, the email that was sent out earlier, and I just want to bring up that the email that was sent out earlier to do with the overrun on the equipment. And, I appreciate being able to see that. It puts it in the back of your mind that, those things are a problem. And I also like the idea of, I would have thought a township as old as ours would have, policies for equipment operation in place, but, you know, doing walkarounds, checks, because if it was just a matter of, fluids not being checked on the packer, it's pretty easy to rectify. So I appreciate that, and it's not nice news, but it keeps you in the loop.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Smith.
Part and parcel of that, you know, there was a discussion about a mechanic. And we don't have a mechanic. A mechanic we had, will probably do those checks, but that was discussed previously. And rightly so, and Councilor Downing said, and I think for staff to bringing it to our heads, to our attention, but those things could have been probably caught. Not waiting till something happens. So I think that's another discussion to have again about having a mechanic.
Councilor Renault?
I'm not sure a mechanic on staff is the issue, but the operator of any piece of equipment in any other industry would have to do the circle check, would know to check all the stuff, all the fluids, the air, everything on that piece of equipment before they sit in the driver's seat and take off. You don't just sit in the driver's seat and take off and figure, oh, that's okay for today. It'll be all right. No, you do the circle check. You make sure that the oil is checked. You make sure there's fuel in the tank. You make sure that everything is okay before you pull out of the yard in the morning. That might take you 15 minutes, but it'd save you 15,000 too.
Can I suggest, it was very thoughtful to have the memo sent out to council. I don't think any of that information is something that we would even have to redact. And so I think were it not for the timing and staff's eagerness, thanks again, to get that information in front of us as quickly as possible. That's the type of thing that would otherwise come out in a report to talk about how we're tracking for our quarterly variance and that type of thing. So since I'll just leave it with you to figure out how best to handle it. I don't know whether we need sort of a routine disclosure policy that just brings those things forward as internal correspondence items on agendas, so that the public can benefit from that same information. If it would ordinarily become public through some other mechanism, and this was just accelerated for our benefit, great. I don't want to short circuit that because I think that was good. But I don't want the public to be left in the dark. They have no idea what we're talking about right now, right? And so, you know, that's come to mind. Councilor Smith?
Yeah, so getting back to my first one, like I said, I can't commit that I can be here for the 22nd of May. I asked the idea of opening it up. But if we're gonna have to follow the special council meeting, like some of us may not be able to make it. That's all I'm saying. I just didn't know if we can just put it on the screen and we can just sit here and watch it, whatever. Like, we're not doing any business.
No, but so here's the thing, it needs to be notified, so the public is aware that there's the potential for us to gather. There's the potential for quorum. If quorum is met, it's simply going to be an open meeting to go into close for education, because that's really what it is. And if we don't have quorum, then we don't have the ability to advance any business.
Okay.
And so the official meeting will be canceled. and the less than quorum can and will remain to take in the education. So it's one of those no harm, no foul doing it one way.
Yeah,
But if we don't do that, we could run afoul and have somebody call for an investigation and cost money for really no good reason.
Okay, right.
Mr. Nolan?
Your worship, there was a request for council to tell us by Wednesday, the 21st at 4 p.m. whether they would be able to participate. So we'll have a better understanding.
Yeah,
But we will have to notify a special meeting at least 24 hours in advance. So we'll probably put the special meeting on, and then if we have to cancel, we cancel.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other information items at this point? Okay, so now in order to process the motions for which I gave notice, I can't move a motion from the chair. Our acting mayor for this month is Councillor Renault, so I'm going to pass the gavel to her to deal with the next two items.
I really think I need to gather very badly.
You're not going to need to bump me on that.
No. I might go if you're gonna make me read this whole thing.
That's up to you how you handle it.
Okay, it's a motion by Mayor Burrow. Whereas trust in public institutions as such as municipal council is paramount for the functionality and the healthy democracy, and whereas transparency and accountability are critical elements to establish trust, and whereas every member of council should be proud of and committed to every stand they take on every issue they consider. And whereas at least one other municipality in the region is known to have successfully incorporated recorded votes as a standard way of doing business for every item considered by its council. Therefore be it resolved that Council of Elizabethtown-Kitley direct staff to bring back a report for council's consideration on amending the township's procedural bylaw to include a routine recorded vote mechanism for all matters requiring a vote. That's the first one.
Yep, so I'll move that.
Mayor Burrow has moved. Who's seconding? Thank you, Councillor Easterhoff. Any discussion on this particular motion?
You go to your rule.
If I may,
Carry on.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, so in simple terms, I've known about this for a while, and I remember when I sat as a member of the public gallery, the residents group had requested this, and the council of the day almost seemed offended by it. But I've seen how well it works at the city of Brockville. I had cause to be at the city of Brockville in the last several weeks. I forget what it was for now. Oh, I guess it was for a Sherwood Park Manor update, and I saw how smoothly that it was incorporated, and it didn't interfere with the flow of business at all. And so it brought it back to mind, and I thought, you know what, it's time that everybody was accountable. We now know that it doesn't have to be onerous, and so I felt compelled to float it as a motion here. So that's all I'll say at this point. Thanks.
Anyone? Oh, Councillor Downey?
So it's basically just looking for a report on the mechanism is what we're after here. But the one thing I would like to say about it is that it does take away from individual councillors a prerogative of the individual councillor, that if they perhaps feel that one subject is more important than the other, that they could call for a recorded vote. It's just, to me, it's a bit of a tool that you could go back on and look up what that particular councillor decided was an important issue. So I think making every single vote a recorded vote takes that away. So that's my comments on it.
Councillor Smith?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll read off my notes because some of the stuff is like what Councillor Downey just said, but you know, in my opinion, the recorded votes demonstrate clearly who voted for and against a particular motion. But recorded votes tend to discourage councillors to vote on sensitive issues. and potentially members of council feel pressured to conform. The fear that a councillor may be singled out and or discouraged from expressing their true opinion on sensitive issues. Councillors might be more inclined to vote in line with the majority, and they may feel that expressing a dissenting opinion could be detrimental to their position within the group. And that's as you're gonna hear, that's why I can't support a recorded vote every night. Because of those, my opinions of those comments. Thank you.
Mr. Brayton?
Thank you. Councilor Real. As everybody knows in this room, I have no idea. I have no problem of letting anybody know how I vote. Whether they like it or not, I vote the way I vote. And to have no recorded vote, that would be, I don't think it's the way to go. I kind of like it the way it is. Just because Rockville does something, that doesn't mean I gotta do it. And I'm not gonna vote for it.
Mayor Burrow, oh, for the love of.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You be careful over there.
Just to clarify, Councillor Brayton, I think I heard you express it in a way where you think that I'm trying to do away with recorded votes, and quite the opposite. I'm trying to make that standard practice. So I'm not trying to eliminate.
No, I know.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, I know.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
No,
Thank you.
I understand that.
Anybody, yes, Councilor Stroh?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure of the necessity of going that far to have recorded votes all our motions, and I respect other councillors whether they agree with me or disagree with me, and whether there's a no or a yes to a certain. I think that's acceptable. I think the way we do it so far is working, and so I don't sense the necessity to change. But I struggle with it.
Anybody else? Okay, I don't see anybody else's hand up, so we will take a vote on this, please, and thank you. All in favor? Whoa, no,
This one is important to me, so following on with Councillor Downey's suggestion of how recorded votes should be used, I would like a recorded vote for this.
You're entitled.
Well,
all righty.
Did I ask another clarification?
Go for it.
The recorded vote is not for accepting the agendas and minutes, is it? It's just for motions made or bylaw changes? Or is it something, if we motion to approve the agenda, is it a recorded vote?
The way I read this, every vote.
Every vote all night long?
Everywhere is membership, blah, blah, blah.
You got it ready?
Bring back report.
Maybe
To include a routine recorded vote mechanism for all matters requiring a vote. So that means everything on the agenda that requires a vote would be recorded. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
thank you, Madam Chair. Again, it was something that was brought to mind that is several years old. It's not new in this chamber as a proposal, but it came back to mind because I watched another council actually go about their business, and I was taken by how much of a non-issue it is. So, you know, I can fully appreciate how people might perceive it's really going to slow down the meeting. It's going to become cumbersome, but from what I observed firsthand, that's not the case. It's so simple and routine. Now, if council wants to consider this in a more scoped fashion, that it doesn't include routine items like the agenda and so on, that's fine. I mean, this is a place to start. But I don't wish to particularly put Mr. Nolan on the spot, so I'll give him the right to reserve to say no. I'd rather not comment. But of course, he does join us from the city of Rockville, And I purposely did not say, I want to do this because the city of Rockville is doing it. I purposely didn't mention who it was. It's just, we have an example to know how well it can work. So do you have anything that you wish to add from your days at the city of Rockville, Mr. Newman, in terms of how it was incorporated?
Thank you, your worship. It wasn't onerous by any stretch of the imagination. It certainly was something that council had become used to. It had taken a little bit of time. They didn't vote on everything, so the adoption of the agenda wasn't something that was a recorded vote. It was motions that were in front of council that would be a recorded vote. From staff perspective, didn't really affect staff. It was something, I guess we'll refer to the clerk, because she's the one who's something to read out the names, but it was not something that was particularly onerous to me there.
I can hardly hear you, Rob.
Sorry, it wasn't particularly onerous. It was something that was relatively straightforward, and I think council eventually got used to doing it.
I'm going to read this motion again because I've just reread it. And it's, to me, it's saying something completely different. That the council of Elizabethtown-Kitley directs staff to bring back a report for council's consideration on amending the township's protocol. So this isn't actually to say, yep, we're going to do it. It's to say, yes, we're going to get a report on it. So that's a whole other kettle of fish than the final. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And you're absolutely right. That was my intent. I did not intend for us to vote tonight on whether to make that the way we do business. I was trying to set an example, lead by example. That's one of the golden rules, right? And so in keeping with your motion, actually, Madam Chair, that we shouldn't consider something on the night that it's presented. The proper way to do things is where we can, should refer things back to staff and then, have a report that we can actually deliberate on. But that's fine. If the appetite around the table is such that we don't even need staff to waste their time doing that, that's fair enough. I accept that. But you're absolutely right. It was not my intent to vote on the matter this evening. It was simply to vote on whether there's even enough appetite to get staff to spend some time on bringing back a report on. Thank you.
I just want to make sure everybody realized that's what we were voting on. So are we now ready to have roll call for vote? Take it away, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Burton,
Yes.
Councillor Brighton,
No.
Councillor Downey,
No.
Councillor Oosterhoff,
No.
Councillor Renault,
Yes.
Councillor Smith,
No.
three votes for and 4 votes against.
Whoa.
It was 2-4, I think.
No, 3.
Councilor Edie
She counts as a
Absolutely.
absent. Sorry. I shouldn't do that. I apologize.
42-6.
Then it just.
No.
No. So I believe it's defeated.
Yeah, it is,
It's lost, yeah.
it's defeated.
Yeah, she said it backwards.
Yep.
She said it backwards.
I said it backwards, I apologize.
We're gonna have to do this more often, Laura.
You just
We
said
said
no.
no.
That's the reason why, Earl.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, 11.2, carry on. Whereas provincial government recently announced its intention to implement strong mayor powers for several municipalities across the province, including Elizabethtown-Kitley. And whereas a member of council raised a concern via email about the potential failure to provide information to council about this topic in a timely manner and a lost opportunity for council to provide feedback to the provincial government. And whereas trust in the public institutions such as municipal and its council is paramount for the functionality and healthy democracy. And whereas transparency and accountability are critical elements in establishing trust, therefore be it resolved that the Elizabethtown-Kitley instruct staff to publish as a correspondence item on council's next agenda, the entire council email thread. No, I lost my place. Regarding strong mayor's powers, which began on April 9th at approximately 11:16 a.m., including April 16th at about 6 or 8 a.m., sorry. And that council also instructs staff to publish a correspondence item on council's next agenda, the corresponding section of on-serve support ticket number 376520 related to the detailed investigation of technical issues involving the provincial government's email sending system and the township's email security system. Mover? Mr. Mayor? Councillor Downey is seconding. Thank you very much. Discussion, anyone? No one?
No.
Okay,
Well,
go.
Sure.
Yes, no?
Yeah, sure. I don't mind. The public may wonder, why this is coming about. I think it's important for the public to know just how quickly everything unraveled really across the province with regards to the strong mayor powers. And I think if one of our own council members wondered why somebody here may have dropped the ball, surely some resident or more than one must be wondering the same thing and must be wondering a lot about these strong mayor powers. And when all said and done, yes, while it affects council, the focal point is on me. And so I think the public deserves to know why other municipalities discussed something first before we did. I just think this is something that would be FOIable, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be in the public realm. So that's why I moved the move.
Okay. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. I suppose I didn't ask anyone opposed. Sorry. No, I didn't. Yes, so back to you, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
Thank you. All right, so that brings us to section 12, public question period. We don't have any members of the public with us here in chambers. Madam Deputy, did we receive anything online?
No, your worship, we did not.
Okay, and so that brings us then to item 13.1, our confirmatory bylaw. The motion is that bylaw number 25-29 be now read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered accordingly. So could I have a mover and seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Osterhoff. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. And now we are at adjournment. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Brayton, for moving that the regular meeting of council adjourn at 9:02 p.m. To meet again on Monday, May 26, 2025 at 7 p.m. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.